you say you remember what you experienced and you learned, you don't want to remember the bad and the hurt. You just want to remember the experience. And if you can take away things from tough experiences, that's the great thing. There's an expression now that says, and it's kind of new, at least I caught onto it just recently, was you either win or you learn. It's not about winning and losing. It's about winning or learning.
This is Jeff Birmingham, and welcome to the Extraordinary Us podcast. Before we jump in today with someone you know well, Tom Holmoe is here today. Tom, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Jeff.
One of the great reasons that I love to have Tom, you all know Tom Holmoe. He's a great athletic director at BYU. He is such a learner and a grower. We just spent an hour before this having another podcast of our own. It was fun, Tom.
Should have had the mic on.
That's right. Should have. We got some good stuff. Let me remind you of the purpose of the podcast. Number one, no matter our differences, and we're all different in so many ways, but no matter our differences, we are all a lot more alike than we are different, and we can find common ground to build on. We are fellow travelers together in this journey on the earth right now. Because of that, number two, let's have compassion for those that are around us. One thing that we know is that so many of us are struggling. We struggle with comparison. We compare ourselves to others. Let's have more compassion for people. And number three, the third tenet of the podcast, too often we let mistakes of the past or fear for an unknown future cloud our judgment. It forces us to make bad decisions. Let's make decisions in faith and not in fear. I personally think that our guest today, BYU Athletic Director Tom Holmoe, is a great example of these things. And I mean that sincerely, Tom. We've been friends for quite a while now. I don't know, 10 or 15 years since you came to BYU. And I've watched you learn and grow. And I'm watching you even today as you've been the athletic director at BYU 16, 17 years. You continue to learn and grow. And I want to talk more about that. Before we do, let me just give you a little bit more background that you may not know. By the way, BYU has 21 sports, I think.
Yes, sir.
Over 600 athletes.
631.
631. That has got to be hard to learn a lot of names and to know your athletes, all of them. I'm sure that's a challenge. It helps
if you know all their names instead of, hey, you. That's not really good.
Yeah. Hey, you look familiar. But before that, he was a DB at BYU from 1978 to 1982. He was drafted in the fourth round in 1983 to the 49ers and became a coach as well. He won 3 Super Bowls with the 49ers. He became a coach at Stanford, the 49ers, was at BYU and Cal before he was the athletic director at BYU. So, Tom, I want to start with this. You have won, how many people have 4 Super Bowl rings? Because you got a 4th coaching, didn't you?
Right.
How many people? Tell me.
I mean, I think the number of them are with the 49ers.
Yeah.
So I have a teammates and that have a number of rings. But there's a few other great organizations. I think the Cowboys have a bunch, maybe. The Steelers, maybe there's some people. But it's
not a lot.
No, there's not a lot. But I think the question comes up a lot. People ask me that. And I think the answer is, the people that have 4 or 5 is not really about the individual all the way. It's about the organization and what they were exposed to and the timing.
Yeah.
And so, I'm very fortunate. And that's one of the things we're going to talk about today is it's from what I have been exposed and experienced to, what do you do with it?
Exactly. I love that. And I want to start with this question based on, I think that you're one of the greatest winners of all time. I mean, you have 4 Super Bowl rings, but you've also lost a lot in life. And that's not uncommon for all of us. We all have days of winning. We have days that we lose. We have games that we lose. We have games that we win. Whatever we're competing in or working on, whether it be in business or politics or athletics or whatever it may be, we all have ups and downs. What have you learned in your life, Tom, about winning and losing? Again, I think you're one of the greatest winners, but you had some rough years at Cal, which we may talk about and some other things. You've lost some as well. What have you learned in your life?
Wow, I've learned a lot. Yeah. And the good thing is to not, when you say you remember what you experienced and you learned, you don't want to remember the bad and the hurt. You just want to remember the experience. And if you can take away things from tough experiences. That's the great thing. There's a expression now that says, and it's kind of new, at least I caught onto it just recently, was you either win or you learn. It's not about winning and losing.
Yeah,
it's
like
about
that.
winning or learning.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes people say, I've heard our team say, we didn't play very well against South Florida in football a couple weeks ago, but we won the game.
Yeah.
And people say, that was kind of a tough loss, but I mean, a tough win. You didn't play that well. And one of our players on the interview said, well, it's easier to win and not play well than to lose and not play well.
Yeah.
And you're going to learn from both of those experiences. But against Boise State, we didn't play very well and we lost.
Yeah.
That's a harder experience to learn from. So, hey, like, I'm not a glutton for punishment.
No, we don't want to
like
lose.
losing.
Yeah.
But I do love to learn. And so that's the takeaway.
But you've been an athlete your entire life. You've been competing your entire life at every kind of level. And it always feels better to win. Everyone, I think, wants to win. I'm very competitive. I want to win, but we all lose. So it's internalized. It's learning from those losses. What have you learned? Like in some of the hardest losses that you faced in life. What are some of the things that you come away with after all this experience?
Well, I think it changes. When I was a young kid, I can't remember too many of my losses, and I can't remember too many of my wins. I don't know if I've had so many concussions or what, but I do remember people. Yeah. I remember feelings, and I remember emotions, and I think that's the great place. Now, I have a grandson that's playing soccer and flag football right now, and he's 6 years old. And I remember going to a soccer game a year ago when he was 5, and I saw how sad and despondent he was that he didn't score a goal. Their team won, but he didn't score a goal. And he's a good player. And he cried and cried. And people were saying, no, don't do that, don't do that. And I thought, it's kind of part of his experience right now. Yeah. He knows about success. He's a little bit more advanced. He has a dad and a grandpa that he goes to every BYU football game. He knows our basketball players by name. So his experience is such that emotion and those things, they teach you that it's okay, but you have to learn the hard way. And so I imagine when he gets to be hopefully 8 or 9 or 10 or 12 years old, that he won't cry, but that he'll internalize that, which can be a good thing. Yeah. Can be a bad thing too.
It's a double-edged sword.
But he'll deal with it, and you deal with it, and then you take it down the road a little bit further, and you keep learning and growing and building. So when you ask me that, I've learned so many things, mainly from the people. And I think what's happened is I've been able to, in my mind, go back and relearn from things that I didn't learn well. So when I was that coach at Cal, I did not do a good job. We struggled, and I was the leader. It's the buck stopped with me. Yeah. And as I look back and I recount some of my errors, I understand a little bit about how it happened. Some of them are unexplainable to this day, and I have to just go, such is life.
Yep, that's how life is.
But some of them I didn't know at the time, so it didn't help me. But when I look back and with new information and new feelings and new emotions and a lot of love in my heart and in my mind now, I can look back on those situations and say, there it is. If I would have done this, I could have been better. So let's not let it happen again. Yeah. And I go forward.
Yeah. Well, man, you from Cal, you came to BYU, and you've been an unbelievable athletic director, in my humble opinion. And I think in most people, you've done an outstanding job. One of the things that people may not know about you that don't know you personally, Tom, you're a voracious, in my opinion, learner. Like I said, you love to learn. You love to grow. You're always pushing yourself. You come to work every day to compete, and you have fire in the belly and gas in the tank to keep going. But it's this learning. Have you always been like that? Where does this come from?
Yeah, I think where it came from was my family. I grew up in a home. My dad was a barber. He owned his own barber shop. And I have a brother and sister that were 9 and 12 years older than me. So in the 60s, while you're talking about Vietnam and drugs, and my dad was a barber, hippies, and all kinds of issues. love and peace and war and all those issues. My mom was a social democrat. And my dad was a fiscal Republican. He was a business owner. He owned a barbershop.
Yeah.
And so at night, and my brother and sister were teenagers in this war.
Going through the 60s in California.
Civil rights, all these issues. Yeah. So one of the things I was blessed with is I was in a home where every night at the dinner table, we were having open discussions. And though all of my people in the discussion were somewhat strict and staunch on their stance, there was discussion. So I was exposed to that. So I didn't have one way of learning it. And I love the fact that my mom and dad, who I love both so dearly, were able to disagree. And so I grew up in a house where it wasn't one way or the another. It was like there's different variations. But I also grew up in a home where principles counted. And I had to know that there's some things that are non-negotiable, that you do these this way in our home, but we can have discussions about other things.
And how applicable is that today? You have 631 college athletes, in the BYU program. This is a different generation and in a different era. Like you said, maybe principles don't change. There are principles that you hold on to. I'd love to know what those are. But then how do you adapt to the generational differences between you as an AD growing up in the 60s in California and the current millennial athletes that you're with and leading and helping and working with day to day?
I think culture counts.
Oh, culture matters.
Here's the thing.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you an example. You ask about my experience on a day-to-day basis. Let's just take my relationship with Kalani Kosatake. You said, hey, I was on teams at BYU that won many championships and played for one of the greatest coaches ever, Lavelle Edwards. I played for Bill Walsh. And the 49ers under Eddie DeBartolo, one of the owners. And so I was around culture that was great and successful. And we won a lot. We had a lot of success. But I can't impose those cultures in the year 2021 with Kalani Sitake and BYU football. So the two of us, we talk all the time. And Kalani, his motto for this team is love and learn. That's it. It's pretty simple. Love and learn.
Love it.
Those are the two principles with our football team right now. And those are principles in my life.
Yeah.
Kalani, I didn't tell Kalani, hey, Kalani, it's love and learn.
Yeah.
He came to our team, and it took him a little while to figure out. When he got here, he had been exposed to another culture or a few other cultures in teams. But when he got to BYU, it took him a few years to figure out, here at BYU, with the principles of this church, and the traditions of the athletic department, which he was a part of. He played for Lavelle. He was able really wisely, better than me, to figure out, Kalani, do it your way. And so, I don't impose the winning traditions of the 49ers and BYU with Lavelle on him. It's not fair.
Yeah.
So what we do is when we get together to talk, it's about the here and now and the future, not the past.
Yeah, that's great. And I mean, I think a key component of a good culture is being authentic, right? So it's impossible for you to try to implement a culture that's not authentic, maybe to the leader, authentic to Kalani, right? He's got to come up and have buy-in to that culture.
Sure. I love what you're saying here. I love biographies. That's a great way to learn because I love people. So when I read about people, historical, and what they've accomplished, their failures, their successes, how they did it, the decisions they made, the pitfalls they fell into, what they avoided. We can learn from that. But we can't be just like them. They're examples. Now, I think you look at the Savior, Jesus Christ, you can follow every single thing he did and do it right. That's the one principle that I'm going to stand on. But with other people, I love the fact that they are flawed.
Yeah.
And so you find someone that you think is so impeccable in all they do, and they're flawed.
Yeah.
And so you realize, okay, that flaw helped that person become what they were.
Yeah.
And it's not so negative. So you identify for yourself. You and I have had successes, but we're also flawed. But we're not going to run through those flaws again. I'm going to avoid
hopefully
every
not
road
we're going to learn from
that leads to those flaws.
Yeah.
And that's how I think you can learn from the current and the past.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, it gives you hope, right? To understand that's kind of part of this podcast is, you know, gosh, we're all a lot more alike. When I say that, what I mean is we're all flawed. We all have blind spots. But I think that 99.7%, I mean, some huge number of people want to be good. They're trying their best. Life is not easy. And certainly you see that in the athletics department. You have every athlete from, Jaron Hall and Jimmer, and all the great, I'm going from, and then you have the lowly unsung athletes that and mental health is a big issue facing our youth and people these days. What's changing about athletics? It's a dynamic area. Curious about your thoughts about where we're headed from here.
Let me go back to something I think it's important, and I'll come back to mental health. But you said something about you have the Jimmers and the Jarons, and then you have some kind of people that BYU fans wouldn't really know their names.
Yeah.
But they are our kids. They're on our teams. They are our student athletes. They're one very important number of the 631.
Yeah.
And so, but one of the things that we try to help everybody understand is there's a spectrum from 1 to 631 as far as success.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really matter where you are. Don't compare yourself. You said it.
Yeah.
We don't need to compare ourselves to other. Where you are, it's just about trying to get better.
Yeah.
So if you're number 3 and you can get up to number 57 in time, that's good.
Yeah.
And if you're 631 of the best, there's going to be somewhere else to go for you. And when you go to that next level, you're not going to be the top dog.
No, you're going to be starting back at the bottom.
Yeah. And so I love the fact that we use this word. We've part of I'm not checking it off, but we've probably used the word journey already a couple times.
Yeah.
And when you look at that, success is a journey, not a destination. I love that a lot. I think about that a lot. So like when people say, "Oh, congratulations, you got into the Big 12. That's such a great thing." I'm like, thank you. Very good. It's part of the journey.
Yeah.
And I realized people wanted to celebrate that, and so did I.
Yeah.
But like, it's been a couple weeks now. Now I'm more
You have a whole new
nervous.
set of challenges.
Yeah, I got more challenges coming.
Yeah.
So now it's like, okay, that was in the past.
Yeah.
There's some things that we learned from it. Now let's go. And now I got to get people around me. I can't do this by myself.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't do that by myself.
Mm-mm.
And now I start putting people around me who can help. We can all help each other become our very best for when the Big 12 does come, that we're competing on a day-to-day basis in all of our sports with all of our student athletes. Now, I'm going to go to mental health.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up, Jeff, because if you're working with young men and young women.
And I am, right? I'm investing in entrepreneurs every day that are struggling with this. You're working with athletes that have challenges.
Yeah.
So I want to hear your thoughts.
18 to 23, BYU missionaries, 24, 25, 26. But about that age group, I got to know those people and I got to know what they're going through. But in this day and age, we deal with mental health. And one of the things is it can't be something that you don't talk about. We are learning more and more every day about mental health, and we're learning more and more about our student athletes. There was a time when I grew up, my family, if there were people in your neighborhood or on your teams and they had mental health issues, it was locked down inside of them.
Yeah.
And it was very hard. You look back now, this is what I'm saying, you look back now and you can go, oh.
You can kind of recognize it.
They had mental health issues, but no one knew about it because there was a stigma. You couldn't talk about it.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things is you couldn't learn.
Mm-hmm.
You couldn't become educated. Now, the beautiful thing is we have student athletes. And look, I'm going to flat out say, I'd say close to half, a little less than half of our student athletes will engage in counseling in a given year. And people go, whoa, that's a lot. What do you think about that? I say, great.
Yeah.
That's a good thing.
Good resource, yeah.
Because they at least are able to know, okay, I'm going to learn about myself and learn about mental health and how I can get better.
Yeah.
So there's parts that are when I talk about mental health, I don't say, hey, it's just that easy of a thing.
Yeah.
There's so many on the spectrum of mental health issues. There's a lot of things that you can talk about and talk through and work through. And we have specialists, we have experts, we have certified people that can do this. And then there's some serious issues that you you move on to other areas where now you're not talking about athletes. You're talking about we need to get these people help as soon as we can. But we can identify that much better than we have in the past.
Yeah, it's a critical issue. And I think one of the, I don't want to claim to be a great athlete, although I was an okay athlete and have competed at fairly high levels. One of the things that you may not appreciate if you have not done that is the highs and lows that you go through as an athlete. It's unbelievable. I thought of Kalani. My heart went out to the BYU football team this year. They've been riding high, winning. It's been such an exciting, great year. They have one kind of off afternoon. Everything was off at the Boise State game. It just felt a little weird. The weather was weird. It started beautiful, and then it got rainy and cloudy. It's almost like our momentum was kind of hurt by that. But my point is, to be winning at such a high level, to have an off day, to have a couple of uncharacteristic turnovers, etc. That is such. The ups and downs are so hard to manage in competitive athletics. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Well, I totally agree. And it's analogous to our life.
Yeah.
So you said the storm clouds came in. It started raining. And we kind of fell apart a little bit. We started to come back. The sunshine came out. That's how it was.
And then it got cloudy again.
Let me just share something with you that Kalani and the team won't mind. That's a little insider.
Yeah.
So after the game, you come into the locker room, and this is the moment of truth. Like, I'm in there. I want to be there because I know this is a place where I'm going to learn. I'm going to learn. I'm 61 years old. I hope that those 18 to 23-year-olds are in there going, okay, what's he going to say? Yeah. What can I do? Now, you can learn from things that coaches say they're stupid.
Yeah.
And you can learn from little great morsels. So Kalani came in and said, guys, I'm shortening it. And he said, guys, we didn't play very well. It's hard to win games when you turn the ball over like that, but we'll come back from this. But here's the most important thing. Guys, when you walk out of this locker room, you're going to have mothers and fathers, and you're going to have brothers and sisters and girlfriends and wives. And you're a man. You're going to go out there, and you're going to act like a mature man. You're not going to carry this burden of what just happened on the team out there because you know what? We'll deal with that next week. But you need to go out there and be the leader that you boys are, and you be your leader to your family right now. Don't go out there with all glum, with your head down, kicking the dirt. You go out there, you wrap your arms around your family, you look them in the eyes and go, we're going to get better.
Yeah.
That's the kind of coach I want.
Yeah.
I want to learn. I want my guys to come better. Now, come Monday, it would have been a hard day on Sunday.
Yeah.
But come Monday, those guys get back to work. They look at the film.
Yeah.
They see what mistakes they made, and they begin correcting them. But they have this feeling of, my coach loves me, and he knows what's real and what's true and what's right, and we're going to go forward. So they're not looking back.
Yeah, and he has perspective, right? We all want to win. We all want BYU to win every game, every year, in every sport, but that's not what happens. That's not what life is like you said. And another thing that's analogous to life is, guess what? We've got a tough opponent on the road this week at Baylor. And so the point is, if you want to mope and worry and look to the past, you're already dead for this week, for the future. You have got to turn the page. You've got to move on. You've got to be forward and get to work on the next assignment, right? Get to work on the next opponent.
Yeah.
It's easier said than done.
They call that licking your wounds.
Yeah.
Okay. We licked our wounds in the locker room after the game in the training room. We bandaged them up.
Yeah.
And guess what?
Physically and
we walked out of the
way.
locker room. When you walk out of that locker room, you leave a lot behind.
Yeah.
Now you carry some with you. Yeah. Here's the secret. How will we do this week? Yeah. And I don't know the answer to that. People go, hey, are we going to bounce back, Tom? I have played a lot of football,
yeah.
But the answer lies in the hearts and minds of those players and coaches and the opponent.
Yeah.
There's a lot of factors, but all you can do is your very best.
Yeah.
And you got to accept that.
And we often forget, too, that these are 18 to 23-year-old kids. I mean, sometimes you have it, sometimes you don't. We all experience in that in life, whether we're 61, 44, 23, and now we may have more experience of how to deal with that. These guys are young, they're learning and they're so man, they are lucky to have a leader like you, Tom. Let's talk a little bit more about one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the podcast was to talk about the journey to the Big 12 a little bit, in as much as you want to. I feel like we've had like 10 conversations about this the last decade. And so the point is, if you've had 10 conversations with me, even soft or short, you've had like thousands with everyone, across the decade. The truth is, you didn't know for sure what was going to happen. Going independent was a leap of faith. I mean, I'm sure there were good reasons to do that. You didn't know exactly how it would happen, exactly what would come down. But the bottom line is, as of, several weeks ago, a month ago, we are now going to the Big 12, which is exciting for Cougar Nation. It's exciting for athletics and otherwise. What would you like to tell people about that? It was a journey. It may have happened on a day, but it was a journey to get there. What's interesting and insightful that you might be able to share?
Yeah, I think it goes back. I'll try to keep this under 25-minute explanation.
Exactly.
But I think it goes back to, I played at BYU, 78 to 82. We were in the Western Athletic Conference, the WAC.
The WAC.
And at that time, you didn't talk a lot about P5 and Autonomy 5. The money thing was similar. But through time, and when we got to be in the Mountain West Conference and the BCS came along, there was a division of power.
Yeah.
And you could see it. And all BYU fans saw that. And we started having this dream, this vision, this goal. Let's get into one of these big conferences. That's where the bowl games are. That's where the money is. That's where the playoff is, all those things. And so that was kind of one of the things that our people said, let's make this our destination. And so we began that. And it was difficult because we were on the outside looking in. We weren't in the P5. And so things happened. And one of the things is when I was the AD, I'm the one that has to make those decisions. But those decisions are not made solely by me. I had a great team of people around me. We had the president of the university, Cecil Samuelson. We had the board of trustees of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I'll bet with those guys. I shouldn't say I'll bet. I'll side with those guys.
Yeah. It's a good team to have.
On that team. Yeah. And so what we did is we went about the journey and we went independent. That was a decision that we made where some were like, nah, I don't know about that. And others, well, I think that's your best course. But regardless, we were on that trail. And that trail was kind of a little windy. I call it the long and winding road. Yeah. It's going to last over 10 years.
Yeah.
But during that, we picked up experience. And it wasn't sitting there just sitting in a chair waiting for someone to call. What we all determined, not just me, we all determined we're going to make it happen. We're going to be assertive. We're going to be proactive. We're going to do the things that we can do. And if the thing comes our way, it comes our way. Yeah. And so we put, I think there's a lot of reactions that we made, but there were also some planning. And I think the thing that means the most to me was kind of a gospel principle, is that we wait upon the Lord and for spiritual blessings. And sometimes when we go into an endeavor, whether it's business or athletics or family, whatever it is, and you want something out there, you prayerfully consider it, you research it, you talk to people, but you're on that pathway, but you have to be patient and you make decisions. If you're impatient, you make bad decisions.
Yeah.
If you're patient, you make better decisions, or you stay on the course. Sometimes you're too patient and you don't catch the right timing. All of those are factors.
Yeah, that's a tough balance, isn't it?
It's a balance. And so the only thing I can say is it led to getting in. I don't know which ones were the most fruitful decisions that we made. I don't know which were the most harmful decisions we made. I don't know. All I know is that in the waiting time, while we're on that long and winding road, it ended up getting there. Jeff, the thing I think about the most, what if it didn't come?
Yeah.
The answer to me was, I knew this because I'm 61 years old. I'm not going till I'm 75. I don't have a lot of years to get us back into a P5.
Yeah.
And I didn't know, what if it didn't come? My answer was, we're just going to stay on this path. And then at some point in time, I'll be out and someone else will be in. There'll still be BYU athletics. There'll be different people involved, but they'll give it their shot.
Yeah.
And at some point in time, it might not have happened. Or at some point in time down the road, it might have. We don't know that.
Yeah.
And so it's just like you said it early on. It's all about faith. You have to have faith in your decisions. You can't fear.
Yeah.
I bet you use the faith versus fear concept on every one of your broadcasts.
Yeah.
Every one of them.
Yeah, of course.
And so why wouldn't it happen with us?
Yeah, exactly. You apply these principles, right, that are helpful, I think, in all different situations. Certainly yours, the BYU athletic programs, has been this journey of faith, so to speak. Did you have a sense, when did things really start to heat up this time around? Like, did you have a sense, okay, here we go? Or how long has it been that you kind of had that feeling, or it was coming on? Or did it happen just bam, quick,
Well, I think here's the story is like 6 years ago, we made a presentation to the Big 12. We flew to Dallas and we put our eggs all out there, all our eggs in the basket. Here we go. This is what we got.
Yeah.
And we walked out of that room feeling like, hey, you know what? We did the best we can. And you know what? We're good.
Yeah.
We could get in. I think we're going to get in. And they made a decision not to take teams at that time. And we came back and when we heard that they weren't going to expand, like the first instinct was, oh, you got to be kidding me. What? And my second quick instinct was, we're better than we were, though.
Yeah.
We're like, what? From that time, we started going, all right, they didn't take us, but we know how good we are. We did research that I actually would go, that's us.
Yeah.
Those are our demographics.
Yeah.
That's
so
the
impressive.
analytics for what we are.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that. And we didn't know it. So we took all that knowledge, learned, became educated, and we said, all right, whether another P5 comes or not, it doesn't really matter. Let's just go for it, shoot for the stars. And on that path in the next 6 years, when Texas and Oklahoma left, it was like, whoop, this little window opened up.
Yeah.
And there we were, where we should be at that time.
Yeah.
And I think that's how it all came together.
That's awesome. Like, there's so many great lessons, I think, in that. You didn't burn bridges when you were turned down the first time, which I know you put a ton of your heart and soul into that. It was a great way to look at it. Like, hey, even though we didn't get invited that first time, we came out better in the end. We've learned, we've grown, we've realized how good we are and can be. We're going for it. We'll be at the right place at the right time when things appear. And that's what happened.
If they appear.
Yeah, if they ever appear.
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting thing, Jeff, because when you said when they appear,
that's true.
There were times as the athletic director, I had to ask myself when I got emails or texts, what are you doing? And I would have to ask myself if.
Yeah.
And then I would push that out of my mind as quick as I could and say when and just get back on the trail.
Yeah.
You got to be on that.
Yep. Have you guys heard of Under Your Bed? I bet you have by now. If you're listening to the Extraordinary Us podcast, I bet you've searched for it maybe and haven't been able to find it.
It's true.
Isn't that how life is sometimes? You just can't find what you're searching for. Constantly searching.
Well, now you can.
Now we've been found. Under Our Bed is finally out. It's really there, people. So type it in right now. Search it up.
You're going to love it.
Look for it live, subscribe, and tell your friends. Can't wait to have you there with Jeff and
Sal,
providing the comedy relief. Good night, Sal.
Good night, Jeff.
Well, let me ask one last question about the Big 12, and then we'll move on. But just what are you looking forward to? We'll join the conference, I think, 2 years from now, right? A little less than 2 years from now. Obviously, I mean, I'm a big basketball guy. Obviously, Coach Pope was a guest of mine on this podcast 5 or 10 episodes ago. Love basketball. The best basketball conference in the world. Call it. Seriously. I mean, I'm excited for football. I love football. I was a quarterback in high school, and I love football. But basketball, I'm really excited for. Anyways, what do you think? What does the future hold? What are you excited about? What are you looking forward to the Big 12? I know there's a lot of work between now and then, but give us some final thoughts before we move on this.
Okay, so here's what I look forward to the journey. I mean, I'm just not pubbing your.
No, I believe it.
This is how it goes.
No, this is how you live, I think, Tom. I like it.
We had the fun and games and popped the Martinelli's apple cider and shook it up and sprayed it out.
We're in.
And then now the thing is, all right, here, guys. And this is like I went to every one of my coaches, every one of them, and all of our athletic administrators and said, now the journey continues. It doesn't begin. It continues. But it's a new journey. Mm-hmm. It's a new journey. It's a new leg of the journey. So we have 2 years to do all we can. Just think how much there is to learn. And if we are humble and assertive then we'll be successful. We will. We'll get our teams we might not come in and just dominate. I don't expect that to happen. But there's going to be a spectrum between now and 2 years. And I don't know. This is the part of faith and fear. Are we going to do nothing and stay in neutral? Or are we going to push and get there? And so somewhere in the next 2 years, it's up to all of us to determine, are we going to build an infrastructure? Are we going to raise money? Are we going to recruit into this conference?
Yeah.
Are we going to refine some of our the things that we do in our department? How's our nutrition? What about strength training? How's our health? Can we improve our health and well-being?
Yeah.
Jeff, I feel like I want to sprint out of here right now because there's too much to do.
You
I got to get off this podcast. That's not true. But there's so much to do, and I'm excited about it. I'm not nervous about it.
Yeah.
It's because it's opportunity.
Well, you've got us ready for the challenge, and here we go. Let's go. Speaking about challenges and speaking about dark times, and Tom, I'll be honest, I was never more proud of you, not about joining the Big 12 last year during the pandemic. I was never more proud to be a Cougar alumni, to be a supporter of BYU athletics. I'm proud of you, honestly, Tom. Talk to us about the pandemic because, running an athletic program through the pandemic and we were one of the few football programs that were everywhere and went everywhere and did everything. Now we're kind of a year in the rear view. Things feel a lot more normal, a lot better. But I just want to say, I was so proud of the job you did. I know you did a heartfelt video kind of asking for donations, which I'm sure was not easy to do because there were not ticket sales last year. There were not normal revenue sources that you were used to. But what do you take away from that pandemic year? What a year.
Yeah,
and good job.
There's so many lessons, and there'll be books and movies and all kinds of things written about it and told about it. But here's the kind of way I looked at it, and I love answering this question, is that it's kind of bifurcated because there was a career and professional aspect of COVID, and there was a personal and family aspect. And you had to pay attention to both of those. Yeah. If you did one or the other, then you're going to slip. So it was like all that we could do was to keep both of my responsibilities going. And so I get a lot of credit for things that happened during COVID for athletics. But one of the great things about this was how many people, they had their own issues. Yeah. But how many people in this community
leaned in?
They leaned in. We put our arms around each other and said, how's this going to work? How are we going to do this? What are you doing? And thank goodness that we have a lot here in Silicon Slopes. We have a lot of VIP, CEO, high-level people that are thinking they got think tanks going. And I stuck my head in there and go, what are you doing? How can we learn what you're doing to help us? Mm-hmm. And so we had a lot of love, a lot of help, a lot of learning. And we did it. We took all of our athletic people and our coaches and our student athletes and our staff and put us together. And here's what I liked. I envisioned this track, it's the trail. And there were, 130 or however, 130 football teams. But, there's 357 college basketball teams. But all these schools on the same track at the same part in the starting position. Yeah. And this wasn't P5 because COVID was not a respecter
of P5.
Of P5.
Forget the P5.
All started on the same track at the same spot. Yeah. And I had this vision of, here we go. Boom, gun goes off. Here's COVID. And who's going to, we have a chance to do things our way. Yeah. And I just knew we have the resources.
That's cool.
Not necessarily financial. We have the human resource. We have the people.
Yeah.
And so I listened to people, and we would go get Andy Reid, Danny Ainge, Steve Young, Tony Finau. I'm going to leave people out. Ryan Smith. We had people all throughout Cougar Nation who we brought in to talk to our student athletes and coaches in communication on Zoom. Zoom is a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And they all kept sharing what they were doing with their teams and their people. And the message was, Cougs, we got this. And every time someone would come on, we moved up the ladder. We moved forward on that race. And it was like the things that you said before, faith, not fear. There were these axioms that we all believed in, but we had to go through it. Going through it, people got sick.
Yeah.
People got COVID.
Yeah.
But it was like, it wasn't, woe is me. It was, okay, when we come out of this, we'll be better. I didn't know where we were going to be. I didn't know what other people were doing. I had no idea.
Yeah.
All I knew was like, if you put on the blinders and at the end of the race, you take them off and you see where you are, we're going to be out there. I just knew we're going to be out there. I don't know where we're going to be. And it doesn't matter because where we ended was great for us. We didn't have to compare ourselves. I just knew, and I did say this, when we get out there, I know people will have feared. I just know by nature. And we'll be far ahead of them. And that last year, all of the teams had success because they had a head start.
Yeah, they went after it. Well, thanks to your leadership, I thought that was outstanding. I mean, what a challenge that none of us had faced. And, you know, I was running for governor when COVID happened. That's not something you plan for. Obviously, as an athletic director, you're not planning for your football schedule to be blown up a couple months before the season, but you did a masterful job. And I thought it was courageous to go to Coastal Carolina. I mean, that came together in the last couple days. You know, you win a couple days before, and that was a weird offense to play way across the country. And, you know, we lost a heartbreaker, but, you know, you showed the courage and the spirit of Cougar Nation, I think.
I think it's a decision that we made. You know, I brought it to Kalani, and he said yes. But, you know, we brought it, we talked about it for a short period of time. We had a real small window that we could decide this. And I think it's a decision that's going to be debated for a long time. Some people, you shouldn't have done it. It could have been undefeated. But that was good. It was courageous. You know what? That was one of those things where we got in a room, we looked each other in the eyes and said, kind of, this is what we have been. It's fear. We could have feared. This is, you know, like, oh, they run a tough offense. It's a long way to go. It's a short period of time. There were a lot of things that said no. The other side of it was, if we go down there and win, we're going to be in this New Year's Six game. That's the way it goes.
Yeah.
And so it was like, you have to make a decision. And it's fear or faith.
Yeah.
And we took the faith.
I love it.
What the heck?
I love it. I love that. We've spoken about a lot of great coaches. Lavelle, you know, Bill Walsh. You have a great coaches right now. We've spoken about Kalani. There are others. I love Coach Pope, of course. What makes a great coach, Tom? You were a coach, you know. I don't know. What makes a great coach?
I think there's a number of factors, but I think I'm saying right now, after all the years and everything, I look back and study. I've seen so many, and I've observed them. I've been a part of them. I've been one. I think it comes down to you have to be a great communicator. I don't know if these are the order, but these are probably the top three. You have to be able to communicate, because if you can communicate, then you can create relationships. And in any endeavor in life, whether it's a family, a team, athletic team, a business unit, it comes down to, do you trust me? Can I trust you? And if you have that, you can accomplish anything, little or small. Mm-hmm. And if you can't trust people, then you don't have good relationships. And if you don't have good relationships, it's probably because you're not communicating. Orally, verbal, written, nonverbal. Mm-hmm. There's all kinds of ways that you can communicate. And so I think the great coaches and the great organizations, great leaders find a way to communicate. I think that's probably number two. Number one is love. Mm-hmm. I just think it can't be a default. You can't say, oh yeah. A lot of people are going to say, oh, it's all about love. All we need is love. Love one another. Yeah. You can't just say it. That's not communication.
Yeah.
Communication leads to relationships. And if you have relationships of love, you can't lose.
Yeah.
You know, you might lose games, but you in the long run will win. You will learn. And that's why I think Kalani really hit the nail on the head when he tells his team, it's all about love and learn. And do you think Kalani communicates with them?
Yes.
I gave that example of after the game, but it happens all the time.
Yeah.
And he loves them. You take any one of those, players on the team, and they walk out of that locker room, and if you were there with your podcast and your mic, and you said, hey, Peyton Wilgar, do you love Kalani? Yes. And he wouldn't say yes. He would look at you in the eye and go, yes, I love Kalani. It's like real.
Yeah.
And so but that doesn't mean check the box. How well will they love him after the next week when Kalani gets after him in practice Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday?
Yep.
Part of love is doing the hard thing.
Yep.
That's communicate. He's going to communicate, not like soft and all fluffy and cottony. This week in practice, this week in meetings, there's going to be love, but it's going to be tough love.
Yep.
It's going to be, guys, we got to turn this thing around.
Mm-hmm.
We deserve more for each other.
Yeah.
And I think that's like, you can be competitive, you can be passionate, you can be emotional, and you can do it with love. That's what this world needs to learn. It's not like, I think people think love is like, it's hard for some people to say, I love you.
Yeah.
But there's different kinds of love. But the love we're talking about is, I care for you. You matter.
Yeah.
I will sacrifice for you. It's not, hey, let's get married.
Yeah.
Or let's whatever other people think love is. Love is,
it's like the brotherhood,
real. It's
right?
Daily.
It's a brotherhood. It's the small and simple things. And there are teams all across, BYU that are doing that and exhibiting that, no doubt about it.
Let me share with you. I'm on a text string with, it's the DB, the 49er DBs. Jeff, I finished playing in 1989, and I'm one of the younger DBs in the string. It's the ones from 81 when they won their first Super Bowl. I wasn't part of that team.
Oh, wow.
And it goes a little bit past me.
Okay.
But we get together every year.
Oh, really?
There's about 12 to 15 of us.
Wow.
And we get together, and we have a text string, and we go back and forth throughout the year. That's a lot of years.
Yeah.
And so our owner of the 49ers, Eddie DeBartolo, is getting up there in age and has some ailments and stuff. And I couldn't make it because we had a game, but they were in San Francisco at the game this last weekend, and they had all kinds of functions. And one of them is they put together a video where they wanted to talk to Mr. D, Eddie DeBartolo, who's our owner. And they passed this. They're in a restaurant, and they passed the phone around, and every one of those players said, "Hey, Mr. D, I love you." It's been over 40 years.
Yeah.
And do you think we've seen Mr. D in the last 40 years? We communicate with him. We talk with him. He calls us. He takes care of us. If there's a player on our team that it needs help, whether it's love, financial, research, he is there. And it started from when we played on a football team. And every one of those guys in the room, Mr. D, I love you. And I wasn't there, so I sent my thing. I'm like, hey, I want in on this.
Yeah.
I was in on the text, but I
Yeah.
sent a video saying, hey, guys, the one thing when I saw that stepping back, I went in the room with y'all, but here's what I felt. Mr. D loves us. He loves us.
Yeah.
And he loved us before we loved him.
Yeah.
And they kind of sent back, yeah, that's true. We have something so special. We got black guys, white guys, Hispanic guys. You got guys from the South, guys from the North, guys from the East. You got guys
Other countries.
Guys from other countries. You guys got that were rich, that were poor. You come together on a team. That's all. If you want to win, that's all you got.
Yeah.
You get in a huddle. Look at this analogy. You put your arms around each other in this huddle, 11 guys. You have to count on those guys. There's 10 other guys. Because in a football game, like it happened the other day against Boise, 10 guys can be perfect, and one guy can miss his assignment, and you lose.
Yep.
You don't lose the game, but you lose that play.
Yeah.
And that's the great thing about football and basketball and all other sports is you have to count on each other. So if you can look at each other and go, I trust you, and then you can take it to the next level and go, I love you.
Isn't this the magic of like sports right here, Tom? Yes, you win. And isn't this magic of like athletics? I love my kids to be involved in youth sports because of these lessons that are learned. They're so rich. They're so powerful. And like you said, they transform into life, right? They flow into life. And I think they're so important.
So here's the thing, Jeff. I mean, and you and I, we talk about this a lot. I think athletics is a great metaphor for life, and it's great. I'd love to see kids get into it. for all the reasons. But if you're in a choir, that's a team.
Yep.
If you're in
a band,
it doesn't matter.
A drama
if
club,
you're
a family,
any unit, any group of people that get together. If you're in a neighborhood book club, I mean, there's book clubs that get together like on a monthly basis, read a book and talk about it. That's education. And they're together. And, not that it was all like they're going to sacrifice for each other. But I guarantee you what happens when you get together for a common cause and you sacrifice and you learn to trust each other, you're going to improve.
I agree. There's so many questions, Tom, I'd love to ask you. Let me, with this conversation could go forever. It started way before and it could go way after. Let me ask you a couple quick fire questions and then we'll wrap up. But do you do your own Twitter?
I do.
You're pretty active on it, which is
I
cool.
do.
I just doing a little research before we met. You're just really, I'm not on Twitter very much, but I'm impressed you're on it.
So here's the reason. It's a good question. Let me answer it and just say yes. I think that it's a means for me to communicate, not to my fans, but there's most of the people that are on that are either my friends, people I know, or Cougar Nation. They don't know me, but they know me by association. So I look at Twitter is the one thing I'm on. I'm not on the other
Facebook or Instagram.
I'm not on those, but people know that if they're going to get my communication. And I look at Cougar Nation. I don't know if you feel this, but like I think Cougar Nation in the last year and a half have put their arms around each other and they're in the huddle.
Yeah.
I think they're in the huddle.
Yeah.
And so I need to communicate to them. So I've started not just necessarily reporting scores as much as like the things that it would touch them.
Yeah.
Or it would be like today I put something out that had nothing to do with BYU, but it was about college football. And it was cool. You have to go see it.
I'll check it out.
But that's kind of like, it's a communication.
Yeah.
It was emotional. It's passionate. And what I was trying to say to him without putting it, I don't have to say it is, look, we lost this game the other day to Boise, but look, college football is beautiful.
It is.
Don't go away. We'll be right back.
Yeah. College football is beautiful, and it's beautiful because every week matters so much. There is no other sport where it matters so much every week. That makes it hard. That makes it gutting and just heart-wrenching, especially when you lose. But, man, it matters a lot, which is cool. Are you in charge of your own Halloween costumes? Tom, you have some of the, I kind of forgot about this until I looked back at your Twitter or something today. You nail Halloween. Where did that come from? And do you do your own stuff? You can.
It's a long story, but here, I'm in charge.
So you choose.
It's like me being the AD. I make the decisions, but a lot of people do the work. And I think like I have a dear friend, oh my gosh, Janine Hollinshouse, who's the director of makeup for theater and cinematic arts, theater arts for BYU. And she said, and we've been together. She's done every single one of my makeups. And I can't, there's no Halloween thing that we got going without her. And then the last number of years, my sister-in-law has done my costumes. So we're ready to go this year. Costumes are ready.
That's exciting.
And I show up on the day of Halloween morning, and it all comes together with Janine.
Do Chad and Brian, do other people in the athletic department follow suit? Or
most people dress up now.
It's hard. You nail it, though. You got to go back and look at some of these. It's unbelievable. Again, these are two more rapid fire a little bit. How many broken fingers?
If you're a DB, you get your hands in places that they shouldn't be.
How many times? A lot.
And I have a lot of, I don't know how many breaks, but I have a lot of stitches. And so, my grandkids, they think it's funny that Papa's fingers are going in different directions.
Okay, last one. What's your kind of favorite? I know this might be the hardest question I've asked, but most underrated sport at BYU right now that you're excited about? You have 21 sports. We've talked a lot about football and basketball, which is normal, but I don't know. There's a lot of the volleyball cross country has been incredibly exciting recently. I don't want to, I could go on and on.
I get what you're saying. Look, I love them all and we push them all and we wrap our arms around all of them. I think one that is off to a great promising start is women's golf. They've won their first two tournaments of the year and came in third in a close one that was a half. The third, they didn't play the third round. So I think they're a real promising team. Women's golf, Carrie Summerhays Roberts is the coach. and they have this great group of kids that are from all different cultures that have come together to put together a great team.
That's
I think
cool.
They're going to do great this year.
I appreciate that because I didn't know that. I think that's insightful. Okay, Tom, we again, like I said, we could talk forever. It's been really insightful. I respect you so much. Again, especially just your learning mentality. Let's talk, last question, wrap it up for kind of the future of college sports. You have NIL. You have BYU TV, which might be interesting in terms of the Big 12. You have the Black Lives Matters movement, everything that's kind of happening societally with the pandemic. A lot of that was fast forwarded, right? Pandemic has pushed a lot of things forward at an accelerated pace. Give us a lay of the land. I mean, what does your job look like for the next decade? What is the future of college athletics? I know this is, but take us wherever you want to in terms of NIL or any of these pressing and important issues that are in sports right now.
And in the midst of COVID.
Yeah.
So I think the way it's been described so much is just uncharted waters.
Yeah.
What we're doing now in many cases is you take your experience with you and you go onto the journey. They have a thing coming up called the Constitutional Convention, the NCAA. The NCAA could go away, or it could change dramatically. It's going to be one or the other. They're not going to stay status quo.
They can't.
So, if you're in college athletics right now, you better have your bag packed because you're going to go on a journey that is going to be different than it's been in the past. You have to bring knowledge of the past so you don't make the same mistakes, but you have to have an open mind to change. We have to change in college athletics or we're going to fall apart.
Yeah. Are you optimistic about the change
Yeah,
that's
of
coming?
course.
You are always optimistic.
There's only one way to be.
I appreciate that. Let me ask, what do you think about NIL for athletes? There are mixed feelings about that. There are, you had the big built announcement with Nick Greer and the Cougars. I was really excited. I kind of thought it would create haves and have-nots, which it might, so to speak. So again, I'm going to say the Jimmers, the Jaron Halls of the world, the Taysom Hills, they kind of get propped up. The others, but Built was providing scholarships for walk-ons, which I thought was an exciting development.
They're not scholarships. I have to correct that.
Okay,
but it's just based. They're giving them compensation for job done that was kind of equivalent to tuition.
Got it. Yes. Okay. Sorry. Yeah. They're like employees. They're like employees of Built. Sorry, I would say. Yeah. And so.
So here's my answer to that. I think that NIL, we're on the first turn of about a 20-lap race.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think the rules will change and become standardized because it's too different. Yeah. Each state has different legislation. So I think they need to standardize that. But I think it's good. I like it. BYU's taken kind of a real proactive approach. When I say that, it's not us. We're listening to people in our community, our sponsors and people that have businesses, and they're coming in. We're trying to keep them compliant. But we're saying, bring it on. And we've had to say, no, that doesn't work. No, that doesn't work. Can't do that. Can't do that. Boom. Let's go. Let's do this one.
Yeah.
And so it benefits our student athletes. And that's a good thing.
Yeah, it is. Senator Romney's been progressive on that as well and been helpful or thinking about that. So that's a helpful connection.
Very good. I mean, it goes all the way to Washington.
Yeah.
Because the state legislatures are involved. The senators and the congressmen from Utah have been super helpful. And so that's another reason Cougar Nation is strong.
Yeah. Well, Tom, again, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for coming.
Hey, let's do volume 2.
Let's do it. Tom Holmoe, thanks for being here. Wow, what a life. I mean, 4 Super Bowl rings. How many people have won 4? Not many. Tom has had great success winning, being a leader at BYU and, with the 49ers and the NFL, et cetera, et cetera. But here are my 2 takeaways from today and things that I really appreciate and love about Tom. I said one of them. Number 1, he's a learner, man. He is always learning and growing. He came into my office today and just started asking me questions about this and that. And we had a great conversation even before we kind of came down to the studio and turned the mics on. He is constantly learning and growing. I think that is a massive key to success. No matter how many Super Bowl rings you've won, no matter what you've accomplished or done, getting out of your comfort zone and learning and growing is a definite key to success and something that Tom is a master at, in my opinion. Number 2, the other thought I had while talking to Tom and that I've had just right after was I think that the best winners are those that react the best to losses. We all lose at times. We've all experienced loss. We've all experienced heartache. Sometimes we win, sometimes we lose. Even the best, the best among us lose a lot of the time. So I think it's about how you react to those losses. Do you keep communicating? Tom said that was a key to being a great coach and I think a great individual contributor. Do you still communicate after you lose? Do you keep communicating to the ones you love and to your team, quote unquote? And then number 2, do you continue to love? Do you put your heart out there? Do you lay it on the line? Do you continue to love even when you're hurt, even when you're down, even when you've lost? Those are great habits to form and keys to winning more and being successful, in my humble opinion. Thank you, Tom. We're looking forward to the Big 12 and all the great things that are ahead for BYU athletics in the future.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Us Podcast with Jeff Birmingham. Please help us grow by leaving a rating and review and subscribing at your favorite podcast platform. Also, tell your friends and share on social media. See you again next week.
Hey guys, it's Jeff. Thank you so much for your love and listening to the Extraordinary Us podcast. We just got news that we are in the top 2% of podcasts listened to worldwide. So please share with a friend. Word of mouth is the best way for podcasts to grow. And with that, there's another podcast that we've been working on.
There is.
And it's called
Under Our Bed.
And it's actually here. It's not fake. We had so many people reach out and say, we've looked for it, we can't find it. Guess what? It's there now.
You can find it now.
Yes, you can.
Search it up.
Search it up. Under Our Bed with Jeff and Sal. In episode 1, we talk about why the name.
Episode 2 is the joy of doing something unexpected.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
And you'll want to hear what we have coming up. So, Under Our Bed is actually there now. Subscribe. Yes. Tell your friends. As Sal would say, search it up.
And you're going to love it.
I love you, Sal. Good night.
I love you. Good night.